Hi, my name is Vicki McCarty from Calico Patch Designs. Thank you for participating in my newest project, Gingerbread Stitches. This beautiful quilt is made of flannel with wool appliques. It is 52 inches square, and it is a 6-month block of the month. If you haven't received your kit, it'll hopefully be there soon along with the thread ordered. This is just a little tutorial video to help you get started with block 1. So now let's get started with block 1 of Gingerbread Stitches. We have a couple of pattern corrections from the applique pieces. On one of them we changed the name of it, and it should have said turret. And we also need to say that instead of a 19-inch square, you'll begin with an 18-inch square of the background fabric. When I do my wool applique, or any type of applique that I do, I use Steam-A-Seam Light 2. I like it better than others, but it's always just a personal preference. It has a stickiness to it that allows me to place it down and look at it before I iron it into place. Some people have trouble with it, gunking up their needles, but I have found that if that is happening, I usually just need to iron it a little more and get the fusible a little warmer. A lot of times it's just because the fusible hasn't got hot enough yet. This product likes lots of steam, so I fuse it from the front side of the block and on the wool, and then I flip the block over and fuse it from the back side also. So what I'll do sometimes is I will take my pattern to the copy machine. I will take the Steam-A-Seam Light 2 and trim it down to 8.5 inches by 11 because it comes, I think, 9 by 12. So I'll leave the 12 inches there, but I will trim it down to 8.5, and I will put this in the printer and print out from the pattern my applique pieces so that it just saves me a little time. And not all of them I can use. Like, I'd have to go back and redo some of the others. But now I will trim this down and lay the other piece up and butt it right against it and use this along with the other piece for the snow so that I don't have to draw them and trace them. It just saves me a little time, and I don't know, it's just something that I've always done. So with that being said, I traced out all of my pieces, or I didn't trace them out. I printed out all of my pieces, and here's what I have to do my roof icing with, okay? So you notice I trimmed the side off like it said. I trimmed this side off and this side off. I left a piece of it here because in the instructions it tells you, after you fuse it on, to trim the piece with the red line on it with a pinking blade. Now my pinking blade looks a little different than yours because once upon a time Olfa made a pinking cutter. The pinking blade that you can purchase now actually fits on a rotary cutter, and you can just purchase the blade. Before you had to buy the whole cutter. So what I do is I lay my ruler down on that red line, and I just use it like a regular cutter, and then there is my roof icing. Just that simple, guys. It's just that simple. But how cool is that now you can make your own wool rickrack. So on this one I left it on this side so I could show you. I just take my normal rotary cutter and even it up, and the way Tom has it on the pattern, I can just set my ruler down on here and just cut these right out. So I cut that one, and then this one I'll lay on this line and I'll have to cut this way. Okay, this one I'll move over and I will cut again. Okay, move this over a little bit and I can cut that straight line. See, there's those pieces. Move this over a little bit again and cut that one, and guess what? My roof pieces are coming right together. And I'm not remember if these go together or not, but that's how easy you can see that it is to make your roof icing. But that is just a neat little technique that I found that I like to use, that I like to add detail to different things. So it just makes the gingerbread houses really cute. So that's how you make your roof icing. There's a placement pattern in your pattern. My patterns are in color and very detailed, as I'm sure you've seen. My husband Tom does all that for me. So if you want to copy the pages for the placement pattern, you could, and then tape them together in this order. That way you can have a placement pattern to use for your applique pressing sheet. I do use an applique pressing sheet. This is a Teflon coated sheet that I just can't live without. It's Teflon coated on each side, so there's not a right or a wrong side. I can iron my applique pieces to it, and after it cools down, I can lift them off as one big applique. But the cool thing is I can put my placement pattern underneath it and see through the applique pressing sheet and lay my pieces out to make them exactly like my pattern. Please notice that I will be using different gingerbread house samples throughout my video, but the techniques will be the same throughout. I just have different samples pictured. Thread my needle. I have a lanyard that has my favorite scissors on it, and I have my needle threader on it. So what I do is I take my needle, I slide the needle threader inside the eye of the needle, and I lay my thread across the needle threader and pull it through. And that's how I thread all my needles. I use a size 24 chenille needle. That's my needle of choice that I like. I do have these needles on my website for sale. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just walking right through this. So to tie a knot, I place the end of the thread between my thumb and forefinger. I add the eye of the needle right beside it. I twist 1, 2, 3 times, pull it down, grab it with my fingernail, and slide it to the bottom. And that's the knot that you get each time. Probably see it better on that. Okay? So now to do a simple blanket stitch, all you need to do is, okay, you're going to start. I usually start back in. If I've had to rethread, I will usually, see that little edge loop sticking out? I will usually take my needle and go back in that little loop right there and catch that one. So you can see it came up at the edge of that, inside between that stitch and the wool. So then I'm going to pull it around. I'm going to kind of do like a semicircle of my thread each time. Take a bite. I come up, I go, this is how I decide how wide I want my stitch to be. So I place my needle in. I want to come up right here at the very edge of that wool. Then I'm going to pull it, and that allows me to have the little stitch outlining the wool and my little stitch inside my wool. So everybody asks, do I mark mine? When I do the little semicircle and pull on this, I can kind of see a shadow as to where I need to make my next stitch to keep them even. I don't know if it's something that I just see, or I don't know. But anyway, I just see a shadow. Now, when I come to something like this, I want to make this corner, you know, I could go ahead and go around this corner and not make it very pretty, but I really want to make the corner real attractive looking. I have a certain way I like to do my corners. So I will take the stitch here, I will go inside the same hole, come up at the edge, straight across, pull that stitch tight, and then I will go back down, same hole, come up at the edge of my wool, and pull that stitch tight. Now, and it's going to do it, so I'm going to show you. Perfect timing. So sometimes when I do that, if you've done this, your thread will roll back up and it doesn't want to stay down over the edge like it should. So I will just go down on the outside of that little stitch, come up right in the middle where that stitch goes in, and I will just tack that little stitch down, and I will make it behave. Now, see, now it's perfect. It's not going anywhere. And then all I need to do now is come back up again between the wool and that last stitch I took. Pull this up, and then all I need to do is just to keep on stitching and go on around. I do wear a thimble. These are Deal brand thimbles. They're very inexpensive. I don't have them on my website. I probably should have them on my website, but they're rubber, so that they can withstand whatever. If you're, well, you can tell I've had it on for a little while, been stitching for a little while. They kind of swell around your finger. They will move to whatever size, they'll form to whatever size your finger is. So if you have arthritic fingers or crooked fingers, I just like that they mold to fit my finger. I do wear it on my middle finger because I hold my needle with this hand and I push the needle with my thimble. So no matter what I'm doing, my Mama Nellie, that's my grandmother, she's the one that taught me how to sew. She said you always put on a thimble. You always sew with a thimble. So I'm going to go back in. I'm about to get to the end of this. All right, and something I didn't show you, even though I'm taking this stitch, see where my thimble is when I'm taking this stitch? I'm pushing that needle, the top of that needle, that needle with that thimble every stitch I take. So it does make me faster. And so I'm all about a thimble. So now to make this, to let this end, there's a little piece of wool right here. So I'm going to sneak over here and go underneath the house a little bit and make it look like my stitches continue underneath there. And see, and then that's my stitch. Now, let me go back around. So that's a blanket stitch. So let me go back around, turn this over, and to make a knot, you can see my stitches on the back are not real beautiful. I'm not one that needs the back of my piece to look as good as my front. So I'm going to just take a little bite. I'm going to do kind of like a French knot. I'm going to go around 1, 2, 3 times and put my fingernail on the thread and pull it up, and there's my stitch. And so then all I need to do now is take my scissors. My lanyard's usually around my neck, but now I've got my camera around there trying to video. So then I'll just take my scissors and cut that, and I am ready for the next stitching to happen. Okay. Once we have everything blanket stitched down into place, we need to stitch the windows down. I use a single strand of DMC floss to whip stitch them into place. And as you notice, I want to take small stitches so that you won't see my stitches. The idea is to hide the stitches. It's kind of the same way you would put a binding on a quilt if you were hand stitching your binding. Next, it's time to add the detail on my gingerbread house. There are several products on the market and different ways to do things. And I'm not saying my way is the only way or the right way, and I just want you to do whatever works best for you. But I want to show you how I add detail to mine. I use a product called Sulky Tear Easy Stabilizer to add all my details. I cut a piece a little larger than my window and lay it down on the placement pattern and draw my detail on and pin it in place from the back side of my block. That way when I'm stitching, my thread won't catch in the needles on the top of the block. So now you'll go ahead and stitch right on top of the stabilizer, keeping your stitches snug. You want to pull them tight, but not tight enough for them to pucker. And once the detail is stitched on your window, then you can remove the paper. Okay, so this is the product that I use to transfer my stitches to my wool pieces. So I pin it from the wrong side so that it's kind of, so it doesn't catch my needle in it. And then I draw on here the design where I need to put my stitches. But as I stitch, it perforates the Tear Easy Stabilizer and makes it easy to come right off. As you can see, it's already pretty much perforated. So then when I get ready, I will just tear the thing off, and reveals the decorative stitches that I need. So all you're going to do is just stitch on the lines, and as I pull them tight, like I said, with a chenille needle size 24, it perforates it. Oh, and there you see my needle come out, but as you can see, it's actually perforating it as it goes. So it's that simple. Now to make my checked roof. Again, I draw my pattern on a piece of Sulky Tear Easy Stabilizer and pin it from the back. I add the green stitches first, then I go back and I add the little red cross stitches, and then I gently tear it away. You can gently remove the paper from your plaid roof by just placing your fingernail down and gently tugging and tearing it away. It might leave a piece or two in there, nothing that you can't take your needle and just kind of flip it out and it'll look beautiful. Now it's time to add the cross stitch tied in there. It's what I stitched on the turret on the right hand side. If you'll notice, I use what's called tailor's chalk. It's the yellow chalk you see in the picture. What I did was mark a 3/8 inch line on each side of both sides of the turret, the left side and the right side, on the inside and the out. These are the lines that I use to measure my cross stitches and how far to go out. I like to use tailor's chalk when I'm working with wool. Tailor's chalk just rubs off as you work with it, as you do your stitches. It kind of rubs off as you go along. If you have one on there, a mark on there that's not coming off real easy, you can usually just take a scrap piece of wool and rub against it and it will remove it. It's just an easier way for me to see where I want to stitch. So if you'll notice in this video that I am taking a stitch from right to left, and each time I lay my thread across to get the same angle and look at it, and then you'll see I lay my thumb on it, holding it in place so that I get it exactly where I want it. Now in this video you can see I'm coming back with the other cross to make the X, and all I'm doing is taking the stitch in the same hole each time so that they come out even. So you're going in the hole on the right and up out of the hole on the next cross on the other side. And that will keep them even, to keep your stitches even. So to add the vine to the gable end of the house, again, I drew it on Sulky Tear Easy Stabilizer and pinned it from the back side of the block and added the outline stitch of the vine first. Then I removed the stabilizer and tore it loose from the block, and then I freehand placed all of the Lazy Daisy stitches in it, the red stitches. If you use the Sulky Tear Easy Stabilizer, the Lazy Daisy stitches tend to distort when you pull the paper loose from those. So anytime I do those freehand and do not use the stabilizer. They just don't turn out as well. So now you want to add the rest of the details to your block in a similar manner. If you want to mark the lines or if you want to use tearaway stabilizer or whatever method you would like to use, and get the rest of the details on your block. You might want to check with your quilter before you add the beads and the buttons. This can cause problems when it's quilted. Since my husband Tom does my quilting, he takes special precautions not to bump into them. Some of the quilters might not want you to do that, because if they were to bump it with their hopping foot, it will actually tear a hole in your quilt, and so they'll ask you to not place them on there. When you get ready to add your small seed beads, you will need to use a needle with a very small eye, like a hand applique needle or a small between quilting needle, and just use a regular 40 cotton weight thread that matches the color of the bead, and just stitch it on. I usually will go through the bead 2 or 3 times in order to hold it in place so that it doesn't come loose later on. All right, so I showed you guys some of the things that I've been using in this project, and so I also have, if you would like to try some of these, I have what's called a wool stitcher starter kit. It includes chenille needles, which I have in here, a package of chenille needles. Let me open it up and show you. There's the chenille, size 24 needles. It has the lanyard in it that I use with a needle threader on it, so that you can add your needle threader to your lanyard that says Calico Patch on it. It has the awesome yellow tailor's chalk. It has a yard of the Sulky Tear Easy stabilizer that I use for my detail, and it also has Steam-A-Seam Light 2. it's a 1/4-inch tape. There's 2 strips, 2 rolls in it. And sometimes, like if I'm doing the stems of flowers or something, I will add this to the back of the flower stems that I cut out in wool, and so that I can lay them down and just fuse them right down into place. So I like this. Or like if the edge of one of my pieces is not sticking and the fusible came off, I can take a little piece of this off and attach to it, iron it on, peel it off, and it will stick in place until I can get it stitched down. So I do have this in my notions whenever I'm doing wool, just to help me, you know, to get things to stick down. It works just exactly like the light steam seam too. But this is all a little starter kit that I use, and it's $14.99 if anybody's interested. It is on my website. It is available on my website, but it's called a Wool Stitchers Starter Kit. So you might be interested in something like that. I hope this tutorial has been helpful, and I hope that you'll be able to refer to it if you get stuck somewhere in the block. If you need extra help, I don't care a bit if you want to private message me, or you can ask in the group. Sometimes someone else is having the same problems trying to complete a block, and it's helpful if you do that. But please post your block and share your block so we can all see and have fun making this project together. Thank you so much again for participating. Till next time, God bless.